Aliko stood by the window of his penthouse in Lagos, looking out over the city that seemed so alive, yet so empty. His empire had been built on hard work and brilliant ideas, yet it brought him little satisfaction. The women who entered his life always seemed to focus on his wealth, admiring the luxury of his lifestyle rather than the man beneath it. It was exhausting. The compliments were hollow, their love superficial. Aliko had become a trophy, a symbol of success for the wrong reasons. It wasn't the first time he had felt isolated in the crowd, but this feeling was different. He needed to escape from this world of pretense and artificial relationships. One evening, after another disappointing date, Aliko made a decision. He would leave his wealth behind, even if only temporarily, to find someone who could love him for who he truly was. No more pretending, no more fake love. He would disguise himself as a homeless man and immerse himself in a world where he could experience genuine connection. Aliko's transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional and mental. He carefully planned his new identity. He cut his hair short and messy, traded his expensive suits for torn clothes, and donned shoes that had seen better days. He even discarded his smartphone, opting for a worn-out device with no internet access, further removing himself from the world he knew. His rich, tech mogul persona was completely erased. When he stepped out onto the streets of Ikeja, Lagos, he was just another man lost in the crowd, with no apparent wealth or status. He learned quickly how difficult life could be on the streets. People ignored him, avoided his eyes, and often mocked his presence. He endured the taunts, the stares, and the harsh conditions, all while keeping his focus on the one goal he had: finding someone who saw him as a human being and not a bank account. It wasn't easy, and sometimes Aliko questioned his decision, but he remained committed. This was the only way he could find out if true love still existed, or if he would forever be a prisoner of his own success. On the 5th day of his self-imposed exile, Aliko found himself near a small food stall in the heart of Ikeja. The owner, a young woman with bright eyes and a welcoming smile, was selling akara and pap to a steady stream of customers. He'd passed the stall several times, but today, something made him stop. Maybe it was the scent of the freshly fried beans or the way she moved so gracefully despite the constant rush. He sat quietly at the corner of the stall, pretending to be just another homeless man looking for a meal. She noticed him immediately. Unlike others who passed by without a glance, she made eye contact with him and gave him a warm, genuine smile. "Are you hungry?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. Aliko was taken aback. In a world where people avoided him like the plague, her kindness was a rare and beautiful surprise. She offered him a plate of food, and despite his pride, he accepted. As he ate, they exchanged small talk. Her name was Nina, and her kindness toward him felt real, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Aliko found himself returning to Nina's food stall every day, not just for the food but for the warmth she radiated. She treated him like any other customer, not as someone beneath her, and certainly not as an object of pity. She asked him questions about his life, his experiences, and his thoughts on the world. Aliko shared more with her than he had ever shared with anyone else. He began to feel something stir inside him, a feeling of connection that had been missing in his life for years. Nina was strong, independent, and unafraid to speak her mind, qualities Aliko admired deeply. She wasn't interested in his money or his status. She simply enjoyed talking to him. They spent hours talking during the quiet moments between customers, and Aliko found himself looking forward to these conversations more than anything else. Nina spoke of her dreams to expand her small food stall into a full-fledged restaurant, of how she had worked tirelessly to build her life from the ground up. Aliko admired her work ethic, her dedication, and the sense of purpose that radiated from her. She was everything he had been searching for, yet he still couldn't tell her the truth. The secret of his true identity weighed heavily on him, but for now, he remained in the shadows, hoping that this bond they were forming could survive the eventual revelation. As the days turned into weeks, Aliko's feelings for Nina grew stronger. Each time they spoke, it felt as if their connection deepened. He was drawn to her warmth, her authenticity, and her genuine care for others. For the first time in his life, Aliko felt seen for who he truly was, not just for the money he could provide. But with these growing feelings came an internal struggle. How long could he continue this charade? How would Nina react when she eventually found out the truth about who he really was? Aliko felt conflicted. Part of him wanted to confess his identity to her, to stop pretending, but another part of him feared that doing so would ruin everything. Nina had shown him kindness and respect, something that seemed so rare in his world, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. The tension inside him was building, and he wasn't sure how long he could keep up the act. Each day felt like a balancing act, trying to stay true to his feelings without revealing his secret. Nina noticed the change in Aliko. While their conversations remained just as engaging as ever, there was an underlying tension in the air whenever they spoke. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she sensed that something was weighing heavily on him. She tried to reassure him with her usual smile and kindness, hoping that whatever was troubling him would pass. Meanwhile, Aliko wrestled with the decision to come clean. He had never been one to hide his truth, but in this case, he feared that telling Nina who he really was would shatter the delicate bond they were forming. Yet, the longer he waited, the harder it became to face her with honesty. One evening, as he sat at the corner of her stall, a decision began to form in his mind. Perhaps it was time to stop living in fear of rejection and start living in truth. If she truly cared for him, she would accept him, no matter his status. The moment had come. Aliko had been coming to Nina's stall for over a month now, and the bond between them had only grown stronger. He couldn't keep pretending any longer. As Nina served him his usual meal, Aliko's hands trembled slightly. He had rehearsed what he would say in his head countless times, but now that the moment was upon him, his mind went blank. Nina noticed his unease and paused, placing her hand gently on his. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Aliko took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Nina," he began, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you. I'm not who you think I am." Nina's eyebrows furrowed in confusion, but she said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I'm not a homeless man," Aliko confessed. "I'm Aliko Alabi, the CEO of a tech company. I've been living this way for weeks, trying to find someone who could love me for who I really am." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Nina said nothing. She stood frozen, processing what he had just revealed. Nina's reaction wasn't what Aliko expected. Instead of the anger or disgust he had feared, she remained calm. But Aliko could see the shift in her eyes. He knew she was processing the information, trying to make sense of it all. After a long silence, Nina finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Her voice was steady, though tinged with hurt. Aliko explained his reasons, telling her how he had been tired of being treated like an object, of being surrounded by people who only cared about his wealth. "I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for what I have," he said softly. Nina nodded slowly. She understood his pain, but now the truth had come out, and it felt like a crack in their connection had formed. The world of wealth that Aliko came from was foreign to Nina. She had worked hard all her life, struggling to build something from nothing. The idea of entering that world, with all its complications and expectations, was daunting. She found herself torn between the man she had grown to care for and the life she had built on her own terms. The days that followed Aliko's confession were filled with awkward silences and unspoken words. Nina had been quiet, almost distant, and Aliko could feel the growing chasm between them. She still treated him with kindness, but there was a hesitance in her actions, as if she was no longer sure of what to say or do around him. Aliko missed their easy conversations, the laughter they shared over a simple plate of food. He understood her need for space, but it was painful to see the walls she had begun to build around herself. He reached out to her, trying to explain himself again, but she kept her distance. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Aliko," Nina said one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've lived a life that I can't even imagine. I'm not sure I fit into that world." Aliko's heart sank. He had wanted to show her the truth, but now it felt like the very truth he had revealed was driving her away. He knew he couldn't force her to accept him, but the thought of losing her was unbearable. Nina spent several days avoiding Aliko's attempts to contact her. She couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, even though Aliko had meant no harm. She had grown fond of him, but now the weight of his wealth seemed to overshadow everything. The life she had built for herself in the streets of Ikeja was nothing like the life Aliko could offer. She had struggled for years to survive, and now, with the truth about his identity revealed, it felt as if their worlds were too different to reconcile. Aliko, on the other hand, was determined to prove to her that his feelings for her were genuine, that he was not just the man with money, but someone who wanted a real connection. One evening, after days of solitude and reflection, Nina stood in front of her stall, contemplating everything. She knew that she had a choice to make. Could she accept Aliko for who he was, and the life that came with him, or would the gap between their worlds be too wide to bridge? Nina's mind raced as she weighed her options. Her heart told her that Aliko was different from the men she had known, but her head warned her about the complications his wealth could bring. She had always been independent, relying on herself to survive, and the idea of losing that independence terrified her. Yet, there was something about Aliko that made her believe he wasn't just another man trying to buy her love. The days stretched on, and Aliko, too, struggled with his feelings. He knew he had to give Nina the space she needed to process everything. He couldn't push her, he could only wait for her to come to him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nina stood in front of her stall, staring at the busy street of Ikeja. She felt a hand gently rest on her shoulder. Startled, she turned to find Aliko standing behind her. "I understand if you need more time," he said softly, his voice sincere. "But I can't wait forever, Nina. I'm offering you my heart, not my money." It was a simple statement, but it cut through the barriers Nina had built. It was the first time she truly understood what Aliko was offering. Nina spent the night thinking about Aliko's words. She had never been one to be swayed by money, but this was different. Her feelings for him were real, yet she couldn't ignore the doubts in her mind. The next morning, as the first light of day broke over Lagos, Nina knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't live in limbo anymore, torn between two worlds. She decided to meet Aliko at the park where they had first talked about their dreams. It was quiet there, and the surroundings felt like a neutral ground. When Aliko arrived, Nina was already sitting on a bench, her hands clasped together. She looked up at him, her expression serious yet soft. "I've thought about it," she said, her voice steady. "And I've realized something important. I don't care about your money, Aliko. What I care about is the person you are. And I think I could love you, despite everything." A smile broke across Aliko's face, and he sat beside her, taking her hands in his. For the first time in weeks, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They were no longer two people from different worlds. They were two souls who had found each other despite the odds. The days that followed were filled with healing. Nina and Aliko spent more time together, and the distance that had once separated them began to disappear. Nina introduced him to her world, the world of hard-working street vendors, the rhythm of Ikeja, and the simple joys of living with little but love and hope. Aliko, in turn, shared his life with her, showing her the company he had built and the vast networks of influence he had created. But through it all, they both remained grounded in the relationship they were building, one that was based on trust and understanding. Nina's doubts didn't vanish overnight. She had moments of insecurity, questioning whether she truly belonged in Aliko's world. But Aliko was patient. He never pushed her to accept his wealth, only offering his heart. Slowly, Nina realized that love wasn't about money or status. It was about the person standing beside you, offering their truth and vulnerability. Just as things seemed to be falling into place, Aliko's past began to intrude on their lives. His business associates, who were used to him being an untouchable mogul, didn't understand his decision to live among the common folk. They mocked him for his strange behavior, and some even suggested he was losing his touch. Meanwhile, Nina's own family, though supportive of her work, began to question her relationship with Aliko. They worried that her connection with a wealthy man could distract her from her dreams. Nina felt the pressure from all sides, and Aliko could see it in her eyes. It wasn't easy for her to juggle her love for him with the expectations of her family and the harsh realities of his world. One evening, after a tense dinner with her relatives, Nina confronted Aliko. "I need space to think, Aliko. I can't be the bridge between two worlds that don't understand each other. My family, my dreams, they are a part of me." Aliko listened quietly, his heart heavy with understanding. "Take all the time you need, Nina," he said softly. "I'll be here when you're ready." The days apart were difficult. Nina tried to focus on her business, but her mind kept drifting back to Aliko. She missed him, but the strain of balancing her love for him and her fear of the consequences was overwhelming. She had always prided herself on being independent, but Aliko's wealth came with expectations that she wasn't sure she could live up to. Meanwhile, Aliko had been silently supporting Nina from the sidelines, offering her space but also stepping in when needed. He understood her struggles, but he couldn't help feeling frustrated. He had given her his heart, and he couldn't understand why she was pushing him away. Nina's family continued to express their concerns, telling her she was in over her head. The pressure mounted, and Nina found herself questioning her worthiness of Aliko's love. Was she good enough for him, or was she simply a distraction from the life he truly belonged to? Aliko sensed her struggle and decided it was time to confront her once again. Aliko found Nina standing in front of her stall one evening, staring at the horizon. He approached her cautiously, knowing that this conversation would determine the future of their relationship. "Nina," he began, his voice low and serious, "I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with the distance between us. If we're going to be together, we have to face the reality of our lives. I don't want you to choose me because you feel sorry for me, or because you're afraid of what your family will think. I want you to choose me because you truly want to be with me, despite everything." Nina turned to face him, her expression conflicted. She had always been independent, but now she realized that being with Aliko meant letting go of some of that independence, of confronting her fears head-on. It was a choice she had to make on her own. "Aliko, I don't want to lose you," she said softly. "But I need time to figure out what I really want." Nina spent the night reflecting on everything that had happened. The love she had for Aliko was undeniable, but the complexities of their relationship felt overwhelming. She had always prided herself on being in control of her life, but with Aliko, everything seemed out of her grasp. She knew that if she truly wanted to be with him, she had to face her fears and let go of the barriers she had built around herself. The next morning, as she made her way to her food stall, she saw Aliko waiting for her, sitting on a nearby bench, his eyes locked on hers. For a brief moment, she hesitated, but then her heart spoke louder than her doubts. She approached him slowly, her steps unsure, but her resolve growing stronger with every passing second. "Aliko," she began, her voice trembling but determined, "I've been running from what I feel, but I can't do that anymore. I love you, and I want to be with you. Let's face the challenges together, whatever they may be." Aliko's face lit up, his eyes softening with relief. He stood up and embraced her, his arms holding her tightly. They were ready to take on the world, together. With their love solidified, Nina and Aliko felt the weight of the world lifting from their shoulders. But their happiness was short-lived. One evening, as they were having dinner at a local restaurant, Aliko's business partners arrived unannounced. They took one look at Nina, and their expressions hardened. "Aliko," one of them said, his tone cold, "we need to talk. You've been neglecting your responsibilities. This nonsense with this woman has gone on long enough. You're a businessman, not some charity worker living in the streets. You need to get your priorities straight." Nina's face flushed with anger, but Aliko's calm demeanor kept her from speaking out. He stood up, facing his partners squarely. "This is my life, and I will live it on my own terms. Nina is a part of that life, whether you like it or not." The tension in the room was thick, and for a moment, it felt as though everything could come crashing down. But Aliko was resolute. He had chosen Nina, and he wasn't about to let anyone dictate his happiness. As Aliko continued to stand firm in his decision, Nina felt the pressure mounting on her. She was caught between the man she loved and the world that seemed determined to tear them apart. Her family, still wary of Aliko's wealth and status, began to question her choices more than ever. They feared that she was being manipulated by someone who would eventually discard her once he had gotten what he wanted. Nina was torn between standing by Aliko and keeping the peace with her family. She tried to explain to them that Aliko was different from the men they were accustomed to, but they wouldn't listen. They only saw a wealthy man who had been playing a game with her. On a particularly difficult night, Nina sat alone in her apartment, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Aliko. "I'm here, Nina. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I love you, and nothing will change that." His words gave her a sense of comfort, but she knew that it would take more than love to overcome the obstacles in their path. The tension between Nina and her family reached a boiling point when they confronted her about her relationship with Aliko. Her mother, ever the protector, warned her of the dangers of getting involved with someone so far removed from their world. "Nina," her mother said sternly, "he's a rich man with his own agenda. You're a vendor, a hard-working woman. What do you think will happen when his world collides with yours? You'll be left with nothing but disappointment." Nina's heart shattered. She had always tried to make her family proud, and now it felt like they were questioning her every decision. She didn't want to lose them, but she also didn't want to lose Aliko. The two worlds were colliding in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her father, who had always been supportive, sat silently in the background, watching his daughter struggle. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Nina," he said softly, "only you can decide what's best for you. But remember, love isn't something you can control. It's something you feel. And when you find it, you'll know." His words were a bittersweet reminder that, no matter what, Nina had to follow her heart. As Nina wrestled with her family's concerns and Aliko's unwavering love, a divide began to form between her and those closest to her. Her friends at the market started to question her decisions, some even distancing themselves from her. "You've changed, Nina," one of her longtime friends remarked. "You've always been one of us. But now, you're running with the big boys. It's not the same anymore." Nina's heart sank as she realized that her once tight-knit community was beginning to fracture. At the same time, Aliko's business partners continued to pressure him, urging him to focus on his empire and leave the street life behind. They couldn't understand why he had chosen to be with someone who wasn't a part of their social circle. Aliko was torn. He had to balance his personal life with the expectations of his business, and the tension was starting to show. Their once peaceful existence now felt like a battle, one that neither of them was sure how to fight. Nina and Aliko had reached a crossroads. Their love was undeniable, but the world around them was making it increasingly difficult to stay together. Nina's loyalty to her family and friends had always been her guiding light, but now she had to choose between staying true to herself and following her heart. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with her mother, Nina found herself sitting by the side of the road, looking at the bright lights of Lagos. She felt lost, unsure of where to turn next. As if by fate, Aliko appeared, his car pulling up beside her. He got out and sat next to her, not saying a word, just offering his presence. "I don't know what to do, Aliko," Nina admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "I feel like I'm losing everyone I care about." Aliko took her hand in his touch gentle. "I'm not asking you to choose, Nina. I'm asking you to trust in us, in what we have. Let's face this together, one step at a time." Nina's heart felt lighter as she held Aliko's hand. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she was no longer alone in her struggles. They had faced countless challenges, but they had always found a way through them together. "I don't know if I can make everyone understand," Nina said quietly. Aliko smiled softly. "You don't have to. What matters is that we understand each other." With that, they stood up and walked back to the bustling streets of Lagos, side by side. The following days were filled with attempts at reconciling the pieces of her life. Nina had the difficult task of confronting her family and friends. Some were still resistant to the idea of her being with Aliko, but others, especially her father, came around. "I may not understand it, Nina," her father said one evening, "but if he makes you happy, then that's enough for me." Slowly but surely, Nina and Aliko began to rebuild their relationships with the people who mattered most. But deep down, they both knew that their love would always be challenged by the divide between their two worlds. As Nina and Aliko's relationship grew stronger, Aliko's success in the tech world continued to soar. But the more successful he became, the more his world seemed to push Nina away. His business partners grew more insistent on him taking on higher-profile deals and attending social events where Nina would never fit in. On one particular evening, Aliko had to attend a high-end gala. He had promised Nina he would make time for them, but when the night came, he was swept away by the demands of his business. Nina waited for hours, staring out at the Lagos skyline from her modest apartment. She understood his responsibilities, but the loneliness she felt gnawed at her heart. She sent him a message, "I'm proud of you, Aliko. But I can't keep living in the shadows of your success." She knew it was time for them to have an honest conversation about their future. The next morning, Aliko arrived at her door, looking tired but determined. "Nina," he said, "I can't lose you. I don't care about the money, the power, or the fame. You're all that matters to me." Aliko's declaration of love left Nina with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She loved him with all her heart, but she feared that his ambition would always come between them. "I want you to be successful," Nina said, her voice trembling. "But I also need you to be present with me. I don't want to feel like I'm just a part of your world that you can switch on and off whenever you feel like it. Aliko sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. I understand, Nina. I've been so focused on proving myself to everyone that I forgot to prove myself to you. I will make this work. I'll take less on, slow down, and we'll build something together. Nina looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. But she also knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be sacrifices on both sides. She wasn't sure if she was ready to give up everything she had worked for, but she knew she loved Aliko more than anything else. We'll figure it out, she whispered, leaning in for a kiss. For the first time in a long time, both of them felt a sense of peace. The peace between Nina and Aliko didn't last long before their pasts caught up with them. One afternoon, while Aliko was at a business meeting, Nina ran into an old acquaintance from her early days as a food vendor. The man, a former lover, had never really let go of Nina, and his presence brought back memories of a time when she was more carefree and open. His intentions were unclear, but it was obvious that he wasn't happy seeing her with Aliko. He confronted Nina, accusing her of abandoning everything they had built together. You think you've found something better, Nina, but I know the real you. You'll always come back to me, he said, his voice dripping with resentment. Nina was caught off guard. She had moved on from that chapter of her life, but the encounter made her question everything. When she told Aliko about it later, he didn't react with anger but with concern. I trust you, Nina. You've already chosen me, and I trust that you will stay true to that choice. I'm not worried about the past. But Nina wasn't so sure. The lingering question remained, would the past ever truly stay behind them? The tension between Nina and Aliko began to shift. Their love was still strong, but the echoes of past relationships and unresolved emotions began to chip away at the trust they had built. Aliko struggled with the idea of Nina's past, especially as she spent more time interacting with her old acquaintances. Nina, in turn, began to question whether she was truly ready to leave her old life behind for a man who had so much more than she could ever have dreamed. One evening, after a particularly heated conversation, Nina stepped out into the streets of Lagos to clear her mind. She wandered aimlessly, her thoughts racing. As she stood near a street corner, a familiar voice called her name. It was the old acquaintance again, this time offering her an opportunity to return to her previous life, away from the complexities of her relationship with Aliko. You can still have it all, Nina, he said, his eyes gleaming with hope. Leave all of this behind. I can give you everything you need. For a brief moment, Nina was tempted. But then, she thought about Aliko, about the love they had shared and the promises they had made. She knew where her heart truly lay. Nina returned to her apartment, her mind still reeling from her encounter with her old acquaintance. She knew the temptation he presented, but she also knew that she had already chosen a different path. The following morning, she called Aliko, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. Aliko, she began, I've been thinking a lot about everything. The past, the present, and what we both want from the future. I need to be honest with you. I don't want to go back to the life I had before. But I need to know if you're truly ready to walk this road with me, without looking back. Aliko listened intently, understanding the weight of her words. Nina, he replied softly, I'm ready to walk with you, no matter what comes. We've faced too many challenges already, and I know we can make it through anything if we trust each other. Nina felt a wave of relief wash over her as she realized that this was the first time in a long while that she had truly let go of her fears. It wasn't going to be easy, but together, they could build something lasting. The tension between Nina's world and Aliko's didn't dissipate overnight, but they had begun to understand each other better. Aliko made it a point to spend more time with Nina, making sacrifices in his business life to show her how much he cared. They worked together to find a balance that suited both of them, one where they could pursue their individual dreams without losing sight of their relationship. Nina, in turn, worked on reconciling her life as a food vendor with Aliko's high-profile world. She met with his business partners, making an effort to show them that she was more than just a woman from the streets, but a partner in Aliko's life. Slowly, the two worlds began to blend. One afternoon, Nina stood with Aliko at a business event, holding her head high as she spoke to a group of potential investors. Her voice was steady, and her presence powerful. She had proven to herself and to those around her that she was more than capable of standing beside the man she loved, on equal footing. As time passed, Aliko and Nina's love only grew stronger. The challenges they faced had shaped their relationship into something resilient and unshakable. However, as Aliko's business expanded even further, the demands on his time and energy increased. There were moments when Nina wondered if the price of his success would once again pull them apart. But now, she had the tools to navigate their relationship. She had learned that love wasn't just about grand gestures or overcoming obstacles. It was about consistency, trust, and the willingness to put each other first. One evening, Aliko took Nina to the rooftop of their apartment building, overlooking the lights of Lagos. The city shimmered in the distance, a symbol of the life they had built together. "Nina," Aliko said, taking her hands in his, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and I, we belong together. Through all the challenges, I've never wanted anyone else. I've realized that no amount of success, no amount of money, will ever be enough if I don't have you." Nina smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I've realized that love, real love, is about choosing each other every day. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." Together, they stood in the quiet of the night, knowing that they had made the ultimate choice, the choice to love each other against all odds. Nina and Aliko's relationship blossomed as they continued to find ways to balance their lives, their careers, and most importantly, their love for each other. Over time, Nina grew more comfortable in her new world, learning the ropes of business and navigating high society with grace. Aliko, too, made significant changes. He took a step back from his overwhelming work schedule, prioritizing his time with Nina and their future together. The road ahead wasn't always smooth, but they had built a foundation of trust and mutual respect that could withstand any challenge. They worked together on new projects, combining Nina's street-smart knowledge with Aliko's tech genius, launching initiatives to support small businesses in Lagos. Their collaboration soon became a symbol of how love, understanding, and shared goals could change lives and communities. As the years passed, they became pillars of the Lagos business scene. Nina's food business grew, and Aliko's tech empire flourished. But despite their success, they never lost sight of what truly mattered: each other. They knew that while money, power, and fame could come and go, love was the constant that anchored them. And as they stood together, looking out over the city that had brought them both so much, they knew that their love story was just beginning. Together, they had defied the odds, proving that true love wasn't about wealth or status. It was about being seen for who you truly were, and finding someone who would choose you every day. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. What lessons do you learn from this story? Kindly comment your thoughts, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more stories like this.